you might notice something a little different about this episode right off the bat. And that is the video quality for the version I'm using that has subs is much, much better. Yeah, as I've said before, the rips of the series are very old mid-2000s copies, the only workable ones with subtitles available being the original broadcast rips Wolfpack Productions made. Thing is, as I also got into before when discussing Wolfpack and the people who ran it, is over time they kind of got backlogged and had less time to sub stuff. So their pace of release eventually tailed so far behind the release of the series that they were able to get the DVD releases of the show to use as their video sources. These days you can find the entirety of it unsubbed online, with no one just taking the time to clean up the very early messy subs, or transcribe Wolfpack's work on Axess or early stream into the cleaner, high-quality versions, as, hell, Wolfpack's work by this point had very few overt errors or unnecessary localization changes. So why break something that didn't need fixing? The irony on that, of course, being that this changeover happens at the same time that we get round 2 with Videoman, who is given multiple dark chips by which to enact his own scheme. The hostile takeover of the film and television industry. You're either a couple years too early or too late, depending on which industry strike you were looking to join in on. So let's see. This time the film parody is Star Wars, the early Harry Potter films, and The Matrix, again, mashed up into... The film industry was never the same after they started writing movies via ad-libs. Curse you, 2008 writers' strike! Yeah, this is all happening at a rental store. The various physical copies of media all going completely nuts from virus infestation. And as Rockman fights, he has no idea that he is on candid camera. Videoman shooting him guerrilla style. A few days pass, though, the Igari brothers still thinking to rent a movie from the place they helped, only to find that the movie they're after is out of stock. Or you can just buy a copy to own yourself and save you the rental fee. Or better yet, second-hand stores. I'm pretty sure you're near a Mandarake retail location. However, a new virus is starting to affect things. It appearing as a red-eyed Rockman. Oh, come on, Dark Rock's not supposed to show up for another year yet. Yeah, Videoman's actually inserted data clones created from recordings of his into copies of every popular movie that was getting released on home video. So there are literally thousands of these clones now, all of which have been boosted by Videoman's dark chips into being a complete mess. The fortunate thing is the clones can only copy movements Videoman recorded into them. Thus they're not self-sentient, and a competent Navi and operator can avoid being damaged by them. But the problem is Rockman's power level is above most Navis as it is. Videoman's own skills augmenting them, and just the sheer volume of the clones out there is a problem. Fortunately, Enzon and Blues are more than capable of fighting these clones. They do know how to fight Rockman better than anyone else, after all. So them being around is a major asset. Man, just think what would have happened had this episode been made later in the run. But even without these things being realized, they're causing a big mess for the net police with just the sheer volume of incidents they're part of. And Videoman's still busy printing more, simply because he hates having a film half done.
どうやってコピーロックマンを? よし、テレビの前の君に特別に教えてあげよう.
It is always strange when you can't tell whether a character is breaking the fourth wall, or just sticking to their thematic idiom, considering he was written to act just like this previously. But yeah, he recorded it all on his film, and transferred that data through the jacks in his head into VHS copying machines. Every false Rockman burned into each of them. Now, if this was DVDs, I could believe that. Just map over the digital file data with something virulent, and I could see that happening, but VHS tapes? Like, I know what they were doing with this. This is very clearly a reference to The Ring franchise, with a murderous ghost possessing a tape and killing those that view it, but technology's a bit different when it comes to plug-and-play physical media. Hell, this actually runs against the fact that VHS tapes, both in Japan at the time of this episode's make, and also in the previous episodes featuring Videoman, were said to both be anachronistic technology that wasn't being produced anymore, or at least not popularly. Hell, by 2004, outside of very stubborn film outlets, studios had stopped making VHS tapes and by and large had fully transitioned to releasing everything on DVD. With the last movie put on VHS, David Cronenberg's A History of Violence, ending the format entirely in 2006, just at the time people started battling between Blu-rays and HD DVDs as the superior successor format. But that's in America. In Japan, VHS as a format died in the year 2000, and there was much faster adoption of it thanks in part to PlayStation 2's having a drive that read DVDs, and that console being so ubiquitous that it disguised how fast adoption of the DVD format actually was. So yeah, this plan shouldn't work the way Videoman says it is, and yet the way it is being presented is actually done in a very engaging manner. It makes sense to take advantage of hyper-popular movies to spread these bootleg copies of one of the most powerful navis on the planet to wreak havoc every time the movie itself is played in any system. And because the means of delivery is so subtle, there's no easy way to connect the source of the problem with its consequence. And with the massive volume of attacks, there's just too much data to process in reporting them that this commonality is just that easily overlooked by anyone investigating it. And if it weren't for the fact that Neto was trying to get a copy of the movie himself, it likely would have remained a mystery for much longer. But ends on finding that the one Neto rented was destroyed by waves released from devices hacked by the hacked Rockman clones, gets the pair to realize the tapes are the source of it all, showing that in his fervor to cause havoc, that Videoman ended up overplaying his hand. As the thing about physical copies of media is the more you make copies of the same thing over and over again, the worse it gets as the quality of the master copy degrades, and in turn the copies of the master copy degrade as well. So the more derivative copies you make that aren't from the master get worse and worse. It is actually why it is very important for TV and film production companies to keep the master film versions of all the content they produce, which not every studio does, as you get the best version of something if it's sourced from that. Just in the case of this episode and the format change for producing a sub of it, this episode went from master tape to DVD copy to digital rip to version with a stub installed on it. For the prior file version, it was master to TV studio copy to broadcast to version received as a broadcast to rip of that broadcast stored in the file to one that had the sub embedded into it. The more versions it has to go through via all those forms of transmission and conversion, well, there's a reason there's such a quality difference. Regardless, Meijin has an idea of where Videoman sequestered himself, since any type of physical media can be tracked back to the printers of those copies, with them cornering Videoman right at their production facility. He sets up a dimensional area field, sticking viruses on them so Videoman is once more free to get recordings of cross-fused Neto in action to use against the pair. However, we've already seen the way to defeat these things. Energy waves released mess up the copies Videoman's made. Specifically, the true enemy to any older means of recording and data storage. And that is magnets. And with that, all of Videoman's tape-based abilities are rendered useless. What can we say, dude? You should have switched to digital. Double magma cannon! With this, all of Videoman's tampered videos are taken out of circulation. The episode says something different, but it's kind of dumb as that's not how physical media works. And the event ends with Neto finally getting a chance to see that friggin' movie all this ended up revolving around, with ends on giving his friend a break, and a chance to see it with the film's actual stars, who are here to promote the theatrical run of the next part in the series. And much like this episode ended up being overall, the sequel was much better than the original. The wrap-up. We have anachronistic tech modern day, for the VHS tape still being ubiquitous. Seriously, the last VHS I ever got was in the year 2000, people. They were going out of fashion long before they actually died as a format. Incidentally, the last VHS tape I ever bought, Pokemon the Movie Spell of the Unknown. Not even kidding, even with the 4Kids Entertainment Standard nonsense factored in, that is a damn good film. We have Grand Theft Me, for Rockman's IP rights being stolen. We have Reference Fest, for the very then-current films this episode homaged. This episode, almost in the perfect center of the season, is just plain fun. It's a scenario that hadn't been tried before with any of the antagonists, and the fact it actually works is great for seeing a mass Navi attack that's not one of the usual suspects, until it actually becomes one of the usual suspects the following year with all the later Navi clones. Not like I can fault this episode for that though, considering these were faulty clones to begin with. And it continues the longer arc between Netto and Enzon with regards to the two not just respecting one another as rivals or being respectful co-workers during NetSaver duties, but actually being friends. It's a long-run arc for the series now, with this being the 80th episode overall of the anime, but they fully transitioned to that being true between them. Bad staff writers flanderizing their characters notwithstanding. And it is something that will play in next time, as when we return, at the dead center of the season, does the largest shift in the status quo begin, all revolving around a girl mourning her dead Navi.